Hola muchachos, ¿qué tal? Buenos días. Aquí tienen el horario para hoy, martes, el 2 de mayo. Due for today was your oral presentation about your favorite celebration from when you were a child. You can watch the video that's attached to that assignment for more detailed instructions on how to go about it, in addition to the notes that we took together on it in class. You're answering these 5 questions, describing your favorite holiday. This is an oral presentation, so you're submitting an audio file or a video file with your answers to these 5 questions, and then also a picture of you celebrating that event or special occasion from when you were a child. Just one picture will suffice. You have a model there that you can go off of, and then again the video would provide you with some more detailed instructions. The rubric you can find there at the very bottom, and this is page 231 of the textbook. You can find all that information. So today we are going to wrap up chapter 4B and do exercise 12 as our warm-up on page 221. We'll do a brief review of the notes that we've been taking the past couple weeks couple classes on preterite versus the imperfect and how they're used respectively. And together we'll go over again in class, give you some time to work on your oral presentation, and then we'll play conjugation bingo. And not sure if we'll be able to finish all 4 games, but we'll certainly do our best to do so. All right, so exercise 12 on page 221. Let's go ahead and go there now. Exercise 12 on page 221 is going to have you guys indicate how old you were when you did the following activities for the very first time. So using the imperfect to talk about your age, how old you were, ¿cuántos años tenías? So how old were you? Using the verb tener in the imperfect to say how old you were. And then the activity, the thing that you did for the first time, that activity is going to be conjugated in the preterite tense. So for example, ¿cuántos años tenías? ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando recibiste tu propia bicicleta? How old were you when you received your first bike? Yo tenía is how you're going to begin to say I was, and then your age. 6 años, for example. Yo tenía 6 años cuando, and then you're going to take this verb that's provided and conjugate it in the preterite, in the yo form, to say, hey, I was this age when I did this for the first time, or this happened to me for the first time. ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando recibiste tu propia bicicleta? How old were you when you received your first bike? Yo tenía 6 años cuando recibí mi propia bicicleta. I was 6 years old when I received my first bike. So let's plug these in. I'm actually going to have you do part B. You only need to do part B for the warm-up. I'll do part A for you for all these. ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando aprendiste a caminar? How old were you when you first learned, aprender is a verb to learn, to walk? And if you don't remember or don't know, just guesstimate. ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando asististe a la escuela por primera vez? How old were you when you went to school? Asistir is the verb to attend. I know it's a false cognate. It looks like and sounds like the verb to assist, but it's to attend school. How old were you when you attend school for the first time? ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando fuiste a tu primer baile? How old were you when you went to your first dance, like school dance or whatever? ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando leíste tu primer libro? How old were you when you read your first book? ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando fuiste al cine sin tus padres? How old were you when you went to the movies without your parents? And finally, number 6, ¿cuántos años tenías cuando viste un desfile por primera vez? How old were you when you saw a parade for the first time? Begin with yo tenía. Indicate your age. When this happened for you, how old you were. Continue with cuando, and then the verb provided, conjugate in the preterite in the yo form. All right, that is your warm-up for today. We reviewed the uses of the preterite in the imperfect last class. You can watch the daily agenda video to get a detailed review from last class on how the imperfect and the preterite are used respectively. Preterite for completed actions, imperfect for repeated actions, but also how the preterite and imperfect can be used together to talk about what was happening or what was going on in the imperfect when something else happened in the preterite. The imperfect gives the background information or the setting, and the preterite indicates when something else happened or interrupted that ongoing action in the imperfect. In the example they provide there, todos mis parientes bailaban cuando llegamos. All my relatives were dancing, imperfect, ongoing action, when we arrived. Preterite, completed action. All right, and so from there, we already went over your oral presentation. There's a great link here to holidays in Spanish that you can refer to know how to say a particular holiday in Espanol, and some useful vocabulary that they include for each. You're certainly not limited to that list, but you're more than welcome to utilize that list or include a holiday that isn't on that list that pertains to you and your family and your religious beliefs. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is conjugation bingo, conjugations of verbs in the imperfect. And I haven't created the assignment quite yet. I'm going to do that right now. But I'm just going to pull up conjugation bingo from when we did this in the preterite. There you are. So it'll be very similar. We're going to use the same board that we've used from before. We're going to fill out 4 game boards, and that's what you're going to submit. Whether we play all 4 games today will be determined by how well we work together and how well we progress through the agenda. So whether we play all 4 games or not, you're still going to submit those games, whether you were here in class or not. Doesn't exempt you or absolve you from completing this activity. You are still responsible to fill out your games and submit. That's the assignment, to get that rote practice, that repetition of verbs in the imperfect. We're going to do only AR verbs for the first game. Okay, so only AR verbs for game number 1, and that's AR verbs in the imperfect. A ver, page 194, right? Regular AR verbs. So you're going to conjugate. We're going to pick 5 AR verbs. If you're not with us, you can pick any 5 AR verbs. Jugar, bailar, escuchar, cantar, hablar, any 5. And then conjugate them in the yo form, tú form, él, ella, usted form, nosotros form, and ellos, ellas, ustedes form. Fill in each of those vertical columns with the 5 verbs that you've chosen, all conjugated in the yo form, haba, tú form, habas, él, ella, usted form, haba, nosotros form, habamos, and ellos, ellas, ustedes form, haban. You're going to do the same thing for each. So that's the first game, only AR verbs. The second game is going to be ER and IR verbs. ER and IR verbs in the imperfect. You can pick any ER and or IR verbs of your choosing. Vivir, hacer, you can use these two if you'd like to make it easy. Comer, escribir, dormir. All right, and then conjugate those in the yo form, tu form, el, ella, usted form, nosotros form, and ellos, ellas, ustedes form. That's game 2. ER and IR verbs in the imperfect. Game 3 is going to be irregular verbs. And those are the verbs ir, ser, and ver. This game is going to be easy because there are only three verbs to work with. What are we going to do? We need 5 though. So we'll do ir, ser, ver, and then, maybe what we do is we do irregular verbs in the preterite too, because you have ir and ser, and that gives us 5, but you have the same conjugations. Fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fueron. So why don't we make that game 3? So that's irregular verbs in the preterite. Okay, ir and ser, these are your conjugations. And then irregular verbs in the imperfect, which is on page 196. And those are the verbs ir, ser, and ver. So you're using ir and ser twice. Once in the imperfect and once in the preterite. Okay? So those are the potential conjugations for game 3. Game 4, since we've been talking about the preterite a little bit, we'll include the preterite for our 5th and final game, and we'll just kind of do a mixture of regular AR, ER, and IR verbs. You can pick any AR, ER, and IR verbs you want. The only thing to remember, though, is kar-gar-zar verbs. Remember that there's that spelling change that takes place in the yo form, and the fact that, like the imperfect, verbs that are irregular in the preterite, irregular in the present, are not irregular in the simple past in the preterite. So keep that in mind. No stem changes for verbs conjugated in the preterite. 4th and final game will be a mixture of AR, ER, and IR verbs. All right, and that's what will be our activity to wrap up class. You're going to submit that in Canvas, independent of whether we complete it in class or not. You're going to still submit all 4 games. Don't forget about your oral presentation. That's due by the end of today. And I look forward to your submissions to both in Canvas.